I would like to acknowledge that this video is being filmed on the traditional lands of the Wurrundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander or First Nations people who may be watching this video today. Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner, and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a book beside my bed video for you where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading, and this week was a mixture of review copies and also finishing out another series that I wanted to completely wrap up because I could. So this is my reading week from the 1st until the 6th of May. I read a total of 9 things this week, 2,022 pages, and I have read a total of 207 books for the year. So my review copies this week were all children's fiction, and one was a picture book and 2 were novels. So I want to talk about the picture book first, which is something that the author sent me. This is a picture book that's not actually coming out until August here in Australia and will have a US release date in 2023. It's called My Extraordinary Mum by Danny V. Now, Danny V is a educator, but she's also a podcaster here in Melbourne. She has a podcast called the Words and Nerds podcast, which I really love. She reached out because she works as a publicist for a publishing house and they are publishing her book. And My Extraordinary Mum is the story of a mum who has kept her identity after becoming a mother. And I was reading through the little blurb that Danny sent through, and she was saying, constantly the message that we see about mothers in books about mothers is, they're all about their kids, they're all about their family, and that's 100%, accurate. But mums also have their own lives, and they also have their own interests and their own passions, and that's what she has captured in this book. You have a mum and a daughter going about their daily lives, but you see that this mum has so many interests and so many passions and so many things that she wants to do, and she doesn't stop that just because she's a mum. She might have to change how often she does them or, find the time in a different way, but it doesn't stop her from doing all sorts of things and having this really great personality. And it was so funny because I read this to the kids this week because it's Mother's Day on the weekend that I'm filming this video. And so we read it before Mother's Day and they just loved it. They thought it was so funny. They loved seeing all the different things that the mum gets up to. They thought the illustrations were hilarious. There's some really fun things about the illustrations that you can find on every page, and they were just obsessed. And they were laughing on the floor and rolling around. It was really, really cute, but they were so excited. And that's always a good sign of a book. Now, I will say it is a longer text, so we had to break it up over a couple of days to read it, but we had a great time talking about it. It was a really gorgeous picture book. So it does come out in August. I will probably talk about it again closer to August, but I did want to mention it now. So very, very excited to see this in physical form. Then from Alan and Unwin, I received 2 junior fiction middle grade titles. One was unsolicited, and that was Mertale's book 4. This one is The Mysterious Rainbow Thief by Rebecca Timmis. This is, a mermaid story. What I appreciate about this one though is that there is slightly more diversity in the cast of characters, but this one does follow Sandy. In this story, you have these 4 mermaid friends who live in Cockleshell Cove, and suddenly one day all of the colour starts disappearing and they freak out, and Sandy decides to investigate exactly what is causing the colours to disappear, and that is the mysterious rainbow thief. It's a fun adventure story that'll appeal to younger readers, and it was a very easy, quick read for me. Thank you to Alan Unwin for sending this to me. And then one that I had requested, and I'm so glad that I did, and now I'm going to have to go out and buy the other 2 books in the series because I have not read them, is Sherlock Bones and the Art and Science Alliance by Renee Trammell. This is a middle grade graphic novel about a tawny frogmouth skeleton that lives in a natural history museum, who every night wakes up and goes on adventures just like Sherlock Holmes. So this is Sherlock Bones. This little blue bird here is Watts. It's a stuffed bird. And this little raccoon is Grace. In this particular adventure, Sherlock Bones, Watts and Grace decide to investigate the apparent haunted painting that is being displayed in a new art and science exhibit in the museum. And they get caught up in all sorts of mysterious adventures and bits and pieces, and it was just really cute and fun. It is full of puns. It's very funny. I'm actually kind of tempted to try it out with my class. I'm kind of thinking that I've got some kids who will really appreciate the humor in here. Like, it is totally up their alley. So I'm so glad that I read this, and I do definitely want to get the first 2 books because it was really good fun. I also read Demon Hunting with a Southern Sheriff by Lexi George. This is the 6th book in the Demon Hunting series. I had a NetGalley review copy, and I was really excited to read this because it is set in a small southern town. It is about a sheriff who is part human, part something else. The town is full of paranormal creatures, and he comes across an immortal demon hunter, Arta, who is there on a mission. You know, there's a lot of really fun things about this world and a lot of really cool details that I haven't seen in other paranormals. It kind of feels like a paranormal cozy mystery in that way, but ultimately it felt really slow. And it's very, very dialogue heavy, and there are a lot of characters, and at times I did find myself getting a little bit lost in terms of who all the characters are. Now, maybe that's because I picked up the 6th book in a series, but I don't think it was, because everything else read fine as a standalone. I think it was just, there's a lot going on. And also, you know, I do enjoy a crazy mystery, but the one thing that I struggle with them is that they feel a little bit slower. So that could just be personal preference taste. Otherwise, I thought it was a really cool concept, and there were a lot of really cool paranormal creatures in this book. So I think it's worth checking out, and I may go back and maybe try the first book in the series at some point. I did enjoy the book, I just wish it had been a little bit more fast-paced. I also read Hairpin Curves by Elia Winter. This was my members pick from 3 books that I had selected from my Kindle TBR, and I really enjoyed it. It is a sapphic contemporary road trip romance, and it was a lot of fun. In this story, you have Megan, who's never left her hometown in Florida, and she receives a wedding invitation to one of her high school friends who she hasn't seen in years, and her friend is getting married in Quebec, and so Megan is trying to decide whether or not she's going to go. She ends up road tripping with Scarlett, who is her former best friend. They've had some kind of falling out between high school and college. They really haven't spoken in sort of the last 5-6 years, but they agree to go on this road trip together because they're both friends with the girl who's getting married. It forces them to sort of address what happened to their friendship and the fact that they both have feelings for one another. This book is fairly short, but it has a whole stack of tropes that I love. You've got forced proximity, they're traveling in a car, they end up being snowed in a cabin with only one bed, and of course it's a road trip, which is always really fun to see sort of what they do. But I loved seeing how they reconnect and how they went from being best friends to not quite enemies, they didn't have anything to do with each other for a while, to becoming lovers, and it was a really good story. So well worth checking out. And the last thing that I wanted to do this week with my reading was to wrap up the Guzzi Legacy series by Bethany Kriz. This is a Canadian-Italian Mafia series, and I'd read the first 3 books, so I wrapped up with 4, which is Beni. So this follows the Guzzi family, who are the head of the Cosa Nostra Mafia in Canada. The head of the Mafia and his wife have 5 sons, and of those 5 sons, there are 2 sets of twins. So I've already read about Corrado and Chris, and then we get Beni, Bene, and Marcus's books. So Beni, or Benito, is one of the twins, and he and Bene are sent away from Canada to Chicago to work with family there because they are sort of wild and partying and they really haven't settled down. Bene really doesn't cope with that and ends up going back to Toronto, but Beni stays, and there he meets August, who is a journalist who is chasing a story in Chicago at the time. And then they sort of get caught up in something that is happening with the Mafia family in Chicago. I really liked Beni as a character. In fact, I liked both the twins. And what really happens in this story is we see that Beni and Bene, who have been really close up to this point, now have to deal with the fact that they're becoming their own individual people. And Beni deals with that better than Bene does. So I had really high hopes going into his book, which is Bene, and his full name is Benedetto. And unfortunately, this one felt just a little bit flat, even though I was so excited. And it's kind of like Heavy Crown by Sophie Lark, where you have one of the younger brothers and you see them and you build up this idea in your head for a story for them, and it doesn't quite get executed the way that you would expect it to be. And also, like Heavy Crown, this one follows a woman who is basically trying to take out revenge on the family through this brother. And that is not a favorite trope of mine in this particular subgenre. So there is that. Although I think this one did a much better job compared to Heavy Crown in how the hero and the heroine came together at the end. But even then, it felt a little bit rushed. So you have Bene, who's in Toronto, and he is sort of spiraling because he's without his twin brother. And so the rest of the family sort of run him around and keep him busy until he kind of gets out of this funk. And then he ends up becoming a made man within the family. He also meets Vanna Falco, who is a woman he meets in a bar. He's really intrigued by her. And what we find out is that she knows a lot about his family, and she blames his father for the death of her aunt. She doesn't have all of the facts, but she has what her father told her, and then her father was killed, so she's lived for about 5 years with this need for revenge that she only has one person's side of the story for. And she figures that Bene is her best bet into getting close to this family in order to be able to take out revenge on his father, Gian. So this one was not my favorite one in the series, despite the fact that Bene is one of my favorite characters, which is annoying. But it does resolve, and then I'll come back to this later on. There is a novella collection that takes place at the end of the series, which made me feel a little bit better about this pairing. The final full-length novel in the series is Marcus, and this is about the oldest son and the only non-twin of the 5 boys. And I actually think this one became one of my favorites in the series. I wasn't quite sure how I felt about Marcus, particularly at the end of the previous book. There are some things that go on between the brothers, but I did really like him in here. So he is transitioning to become the head of the family, and it's something that he's been preparing for his whole life. And he is also in the midst of having to deal with something to do with a motorcycle club that is trying to muscle into their territory, and so he's dealing with all of that. Alongside that, his father has asked him to help prepare a surprise for his mother for their wedding anniversary. The whole way through the series, we know that the boys have this really great relationship with their parents, particularly their mother, who loves them beyond all measure. So Marcus is helping his father redo a penthouse apartment that they have in the city that she loves, and updating it and making it more modern and sort of and very family friendly for all of the grandkids that she now has. And he's working alongside this designer, Chella. And Chella is a single mother, and she has ties to the Mafia as well, but Mafia in New York, I think. They've actually met previously at the funeral for her husband. So her husband was not a member of the Mafia, but he passed away as a result of things to do with that life, and left her as a single mother with their young daughter, Tiffany, who is just... I loved Tiffany. I love kids when they're done well in books, and Tiffany was done so well. And they begin to spend time with one another, and they begin to enjoy each other's company, and they decide to pursue a relationship. It was just really nice seeing how Chella and Marcus fit together, but also how his relationship with Tiffany came about, and the fact that he never once tried to replace the father. And he would talk to Chella about her husband, and he would talk to Tiffany about her dad. And it was never about taking the place of him. It was always about, no, you are important to me and he was important to you, so it's important that we talk about this. And I really enjoyed it. There was the third act conflict, which was very dramatic, but I did overall really enjoy this particular story and these characters, and I thought it was a nice way to wrap up the series. So I'm glad that it ended on a high note. And then I just wanted to finish out with the anthology, which was the firsts, and so they're little kind of like novella epilogues to their stories. So we get to see all of the different characters going through pregnancies and births and marriages and whatnot. So we get a short story for Corrado, Alessio, and Ginevra. You have one for Chris and for... oh gosh, I'm going to forget her name. Chris and Val. You have Beni and August, you have Bene and Vanna, and then you also get another check-in with Marcus and Chella, which was really nice. And it was just nice to sort of have those wrapped up. And I need to do a bit of a deep dive into Bethany Chris to see if we get any of the kids' stories, like the next generation, because all the kids were adorable. I really like them. All right, so that is my wrap up for this week. In the comments, I would love to know if you have read any of these books or if you're planning on picking any of them up. If you want to let me know that you're here but you don't want to leave a comment, feel free to leave a rainbow emoji down below. Otherwise, I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, everyone.